Todd Blanche's path to becoming the permanent Attorney General of the United States may be collapsing at the exact moment Donald Trump expected Republicans to fall in line. For weeks, Blanche appeared to have one enormous advantage: numbers. Republicans control enough seats in the Senate that, once his nomination reached the floor, confirmation looked highly likely. Trump's former personal attorney seemed positioned to move from defending one man to controlling the most powerful law enforcement institution in the country. Yet that plan has now run into a problem. Trump may not be able to bully away. The real battle is not on the Senate floor. It is inside the Senate Judiciary Committee, where the margin is narrow and where just one Republican defection could throw Blanche's nomination into chaos. And right now, there are not one but two Republican senators refusing to guarantee their support. Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina and Senator John Cornyn of Texas are demanding something Blanche has repeatedly avoided giving them: a formal, signed, written commitment, not another verbal assurance, not another carefully worded answer, not another promise that can later be reinterpreted. They want it in writing. And Blanche's refusal to provide that document is turning a confirmation fight into a much larger scandal involving Donald Trump, possible tax protection, a disputed government fund, and serious questions about whether the man seeking to lead the Justice Department can be trusted at all. The Judiciary Committee vote is Blanche's last major obstacle before a full Senate confirmation vote. If Republicans advance him out of committee, the party's broader Senate majority could make his final confirmation difficult to stop. That is exactly why Tillis and Cornyn suddenly matter so much. Both men sit on the Judiciary Committee. Either one could deny Blanche the support he needs. More importantly, they are not raising some minor procedural complaint. They are tying their votes to a controversial arrangement that critics say provides extraordinary benefits to Trump, members of his family, and potentially other political allies. The dispute centers on two major provisions. The first is an anti-weaponization fund that opponents describe as a political slush fund. Critics fear that the money could ultimately be redirected to individuals connected to January 6th or to people whom Trump portrays as victims of politically motivated prosecution. Blanche has reportedly said that this portion of the arrangement is dead. The problem is that he has only said it verbally. He has refused to put that assurance into a signed legal document. And that distinction is not cosmetic. A political statement made during a confirmation battle is not necessarily the same thing as a formal modification of an agreement between the government and private parties. That is why the senators are pressing him. If the fund is truly dead, why not sign a document making that clear? If Blanche has no intention of reviving it, redirecting it, renaming it, or preserving it through another mechanism, why continue resisting a written commitment? The longer he refuses, the more damaging the question becomes. The second part of the controversy may be even more serious. The disputed arrangement protects Donald Trump, his businesses, and multiple members of his family from ongoing IRS audits. Critics argue that this protection could be worth more than $100 million in taxes. That is not a symbolic benefit. It is potentially an enormous financial shield for Blanche's former client. And unlike the anti-weaponization fund, which Blanche has verbally described as dead, the IRS-related protection is reportedly still alive. That creates an extraordinary conflict at the center of his nomination. Blanche is not simply a lawyer with a past relationship to Trump. He is Trump's former personal attorney seeking control of the Justice Department while defending an arrangement that critics say could protect Trump from ongoing tax scrutiny. This is why the demand from Tillis and Cornyn is so important. They are not merely asking Blanche to clarify his position. They want him to formally rein in both parts of the deal before they vote. Tillis was direct when reporters asked whether Blanche should expect his support without those written changes. His answer was effectively no. Cornyn went even further. He suggested that Blanche's team already understands what the senators require. In Cornyn's words, they know what they need to do. They simply do not want to do it. That statement cuts through every excuse. If Cornyn is right, then the problem is not confusion, timing, or paperwork. The problem is unwillingness. Blanche allegedly knows exactly what would secure the votes, yet he is still refusing to take that step. And that naturally raises the question, who is he protecting? Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse focused on that exact issue during Blanche's nomination process. Whitehouse asked a basic legal question: can a verbal statement from an acting attorney general actually modify a contractual or settlement agreement between the United States government and private individuals? It is a devastatingly simple question because it exposes the difference between public relations and legal reality. Blanche can say the fund is dead during a hearing. He can repeat that claim to reporters. He can tell Republican senators whatever they need to hear privately. Yet, unless the underlying agreement is formally changed, those words may not eliminate the legal framework that created the fund in the first place. According to the segment, Blanche did not directly answer Whitehouse's question. Instead, he repeated previous statements and avoided addressing whether his verbal promise had any legal force. That kind of response may help a nominee survive a difficult hearing, but it does not build trust. In fact, it does the opposite. Every time Blanche refuses to provide a direct answer, he strengthens the suspicion that ambiguity is the point. Perhaps he wants the political benefit of telling senators the fund is dead while preserving enough legal flexibility to restore it later. Perhaps he wants to technically comply with one demand while finding another route to achieve the same result. The transcript does not prove Blanche's intent. Still, his refusal gives critics a powerful argument. If there is nothing to hide, why fear putting the promise in writing? Whitehouse did not soften his judgment. He described Blanche as slippery, evasive, and extremely difficult to trust. He argued that Blanche's answers are consistently hedged, carefully constructed to leave a small opening that can be exploited later. That accusation goes directly to Blanche's fitness to become Attorney General. The head of the Justice Department has enormous discretion. He can decide which cases receive attention, which investigations move forward, which legal arguments the government makes, and how aggressively federal power is used. Senators are therefore not merely evaluating Blanche's legal resume. They are deciding whether his commitments mean anything once he holds the office. Whitehouse's concern is that Blanche could promise not to move forward with one specific fund, then create a different mechanism that delivers similar benefits. He could claim to have complied with the literal language of a demand while violating its purpose. That is why Whitehouse insists that every concession must be formal, comprehensive, and legally enforceable. His language is aggressive, but the underlying question is serious. Can senators rely on Blanche when his former client stands to benefit? Whitehouse then builds what is effectively a three-part case against Blanche. The first part is the disputed anti-weaponization fund. Critics believe this fund could reward individuals who supported Trump or who faced prosecution connected to January 6th. In their view, it would transform public money into a political loyalty program, compensating people whom Trump considers allies or victims. Blanche says that portion is finished. Yet without a signed document, his opponents argue that the promise remains incomplete and potentially reversible. The second part is the alleged tax protection for Trump and his family. Whitehouse portrays this as the most financially significant feature of the arrangement. Trump has already faced major civil findings involving fraudulent financial representations. Against that background, shielding him from IRS audits would not look like ordinary administrative discretion. It would look like a former personal attorney using government authority to protect a former client from scrutiny. These remain allegations and political arguments, not final judicial findings about Blanche's intent. Even so, they create a severe appearance problem for a nominee expected to enforce federal law without fear or favor. The third part concerns the way the arrangement was reportedly handled in a federal court in Florida. Whitehouse says the judge became so concerned about the lawyer's conduct that the matter was referred to New York bar authorities, which have disciplinary jurisdiction over Blanche. He also says the judge found a substantial concern that a fraud may have been committed upon the court. That is the most explosive allegation in the entire segment. Fraud on the court is not a minor technical violation. It suggests that the judicial process itself may have been manipulated through deception or misconduct. Whitehouse emphasizes that senior Justice Department officials are almost never placed under scrutiny for anything comparable. For Blanche, that creates a brutal contradiction. He is seeking confirmation to lead the Justice Department, while questions remain about whether his own legal conduct requires disciplinary review. This is where the political danger becomes much larger than 2 committee votes. If the opposition came only from Democrats, Trump could dismiss it as partisan resistance and accuse them of weaponizing the confirmation process. Tillis and Cornyn make that defense much harder. These are Republican senators telling Trump's nominee that verbal assurances are not enough. They are demanding a signed document before giving him their votes. Their resistance gives the controversy bipartisan credibility and signals to other Republicans that opposing Blanche may be politically defensible. A failed committee vote would not necessarily end the nomination automatically. Senate leaders could attempt to bring Blanche to the floor despite an unfavorable committee recommendation, yet that path would be far more dangerous. If Tillis and Cornyn remain opposed, Blanche would begin the full Senate fight already 2 Republican votes down. Other senators who are uneasy about the tax provisions, the court controversy, or Blanche's close relationship with Trump could follow them. With elections approaching, some Republicans may not want to own every allegation connected to Blanche. That is the nightmare scenario for Trump. A nomination that once looked secure could become a public test of loyalty, forcing Republican senators to choose between protecting Trump and protecting themselves. Trump selected Blanche because loyalty matters to him. Blanche defended him personally and understood his legal battles, grievances, and expectations. To Trump, that relationship may have made him the ideal choice, yet the same relationship is now poisoning the nomination. Every controversial decision involving Trump becomes evidence of a potential conflict. Every evasive answer sounds like an attempt to protect a former client. Every refusal to sign a document raises fears that Blanche's loyalty to Trump may be stronger than his obligation to the public. The Attorney General is not the president's private lawyer. The office exists to enforce the law on behalf of the United States. It cannot function credibly if the public believes the Attorney General is using federal authority to shield the president, his family, or his political allies from taxes, investigations, or accountability. That is the deeper issue hiding beneath the committee vote. This is not merely a debate about whether Blanche has enough senators on his side. It is a debate about whether the Justice Department would remain an independent institution or become an extension of Trump's personal legal operation. The segment does not provide a confirmed explanation for Blanche's refusal to put everything in writing. Still, several possibilities emerge from the facts presented. Perhaps Blanche lacks authority to cancel the arrangement without Trump's approval. Perhaps the administration wants to preserve the IRS protection. Or perhaps Blanche wants enough ambiguity to claim the fund ended while keeping parts of the underlying agreement intact. There is also a more political explanation. Trump and Blanche may believe Tillis and Cornyn will eventually surrender. Republican senators often criticize Trump's nominees before voting with the party when the pressure becomes intense. Blanche may be calculating that he does not need to make a binding concession because fear of Trump will ultimately bring the holdouts back into line. That would be a dangerous gamble. By refusing to sign, Blanche is validating the criticism that he is evasive and unwilling to give senators an enforceable commitment. For all the allegations, insults, and procedural complexity in this story, the most damaging question remains the simplest one. If Blanche truly intends to end the disputed fund, why will he not put that promise in writing? If he believes the IRS-related provision is legitimate, why will he not publicly explain its legal basis and why Trump deserves that protection? If the court process was proper, why are disciplinary and fraud on the court concerns hanging over the deal? And if Blanche expects the Senate to trust him with the Justice Department, why is he making trust so difficult? Those questions are more powerful than any partisan speech because they do not depend on White House's insults or the host's outrage. They arise directly from Blanche's conduct as described in the segment. He wants one of the most powerful offices in the country. Senators are asking for a signed commitment. He has not given it to them. That refusal now threatens everything. Todd Blanche entered this confirmation battle with Donald Trump's full support and a Republican Senate majority behind him. Under normal circumstances, that should have been enough. Instead, his nomination is approaching a decisive vote under a cloud of suspicion. 2 Republican senators are withholding their support. A disputed fund remains unresolved. Protection from IRS audits could provide Trump and his family with enormous financial benefits. A federal judge's concerns have reportedly triggered professional scrutiny, and Blanche continues to resist the one action that might calm the crisis, putting his promises into a binding written document. The next vote will reveal whether Tillis and Cornyn are serious or whether they eventually retreat under pressure from Trump. It will also reveal whether other Republicans are prepared to take responsibility for Blanche's past conduct and whatever he may do in the future. Trump expected loyalty to carry his former attorney into the Justice Department. Instead, that personal connection may be the very thing destroying his nomination. Because the closer senators look at Todd Blanche, the harder it becomes to separate the nominee from the man he once represented. And until Blanche proves, in writing, that he will serve the law rather than Donald Trump, his path to becoming Attorney General will remain trapped inside the same question he keeps refusing to answer. Who would Todd Blanche really be working for?